Some of the creature comforts aboard Skylab. Here's Jack Lausma from the second crew taking a shower. You could actually zip that thing closed and spray water, and of course it wouldn't behave like it does here on Earth. It forms little spheres that you have to kind of corral and get against your skin, and then mix it with soap and so forth, and mop it up and rinse and so forth. It wasn't exactly the easiest way to take a shower, but it was fun. And on the left, a schematic drawing of the first toilet facilities on a U.S. spacecraft, an honest-to-God toilet, none of this plastic bag stuff anymore. And that also was a much appreciated improvement. As you saw, there's so much room in that upper deck that you can do things that you could never have done on a smaller spacecraft, including on the second and third missions. They actually tested a couple of different designs for a manned maneuvering unit. And on the left, you can see Alan Bean in his spacesuit testing out this jet-powered backpack, flying it around inside the workshop. And on the right, Bean is testing a different kind of maneuvering unit that leaves your hands free to do other things because you control it with your feet. And so these were interesting little space engineering tests that Skylab allowed them to do. Of course, science was one of the main reasons to go up to Skylab, including those observations of the sun. Ed Gibson, who, as I say, had been a solar physicist before becoming an astronaut, really enjoyed the chance to study the sun from space. And on the right, you see a false color representation of the sun in ultraviolet light that the third crew obtained during their stay. And notice the huge loop of hot gas flowing out from the sun in the upper left portion of the sun, what's called a solar prominence, one of the largest ever seen. So the data on the sun from Skylab was tremendously interesting to astronomers. And they did other experiments too. They did photographs of the Earth in different wavelengths of light to try and understand climatic conditions and vegetation and natural resources on the Earth. They also did some manufacturing experiments with a furnace that could melt droplets of metal and see how they behaved in zero gravity. One of the really special things that they got to do on the last mission, there was a comet that became visible during the latter part of 1973 called Comet Kohoutek, and it did not get as bright as astronomers had predicted initially, but it was very well visible to the astronauts orbiting the Earth when they flew through the nighttime portion of their orbit. And this is a sketch that you see, a couple of sketches by Ed Gibson based on observations of the comet, not only through the window of Skylab, but during a spacewalk that he and one of the other astronauts took while the comet was within view. Well, the last Skylab crew had a bit of a problem with their schedule. The second crew, Bean's crew, was so productive that they kind of got mission control into the habit of scheduling every minute, practically every second of the astronauts' time pretty rigidly. And, you can see on the left there is kind of an idealized representation of what a Skylab astronaut's working day was supposed to be like. And you've got your 8 hours of sleep, and then you wake up and you've got a certain amount of time for hygiene, a certain amount of time for breakfast. Then there's housekeeping. You've got experiments to do. You got a little bit off for lunch, so on and so forth. But in reality, a lot of things took longer than expected. There was gear that the previous crew had not put back where the next crew thought it would be, so they had to go search for it. Little parts and pieces of experiments sometimes got mislaid and floated away in zero gravity. You can imagine all the things that would interrupt an otherwise smooth flow of work. So the astronauts began to feel like they were on a treadmill on that last crew, Jerry Carr's crew. And they let their frustration be known. They just wanted to have some time off for a little bit of R&R every once in a while so that they had some psychological recharge. Being up there for almost 3 months, you really needed that. You can see on the right, Jerry Carr on the bottom is having a bit of fun pretending to balance Bill Pogue on his finger. Of course, in zero G, neither of them weighs anything. But so this was the main source of friction on the last mission, which served as a cautionary tale for anybody thinking about designing a space station in the future or long-duration operations in space. Well, here's a photograph from the third crew as they left Skylab, and you can see that twin-pole sunshade that the second crew, Bean's crew, had put out. And this was Skylab as it remained in Earth orbit after the third crew left. Well, in 1972, even before Skylab flew, there was a bit of long-range thinking going on, not only at NASA, but in the political circles, the international circles between the United States and the Soviet Union. In 1972, President Nixon met with Soviet Premier Kosygin, who was the negotiating partner for the Soviets in what was called détente. And that meant a lessening of tension. And one of the areas that they decided they would try and pursue cooperation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union was in space. And NASA had given the Nixon administration some ideas, and the most ambitious was an actual docking mission between U.S. and Russian spacecraft. And that became the mission known as Apollo-Soyuz. And you can see here in the New York Times article from 1972, they've already got a design for a docking module that could be attached to the Apollo spacecraft, and a new type of docking system that could be used to link the two craft together. Here are the astronauts and cosmonauts who were selected for that flight. In the brown coveralls, the American crew, commanded by Tom Stafford, with rookies Vance Brand and, of all people, Deke Slayton, who had been waiting since he was selected as one of the original 7 astronauts to fly in space, but had been grounded ever since 1962 because doctors feared that he had irregular heartbeats that might present a medical threat to him if he flew in space. But he felt absolutely fine, and he couldn't get the doctors to clear him for spaceflight. He finally did get that clearance and was assigned to the Apollo-Soyuz crew. The Soviet crew in the light green coveralls are led by the veteran spacewalker, first man to walk in space, Alexei Leonov, and a rookie named Valery Kubasov. Here's a representation of the docking, and below you can see a little more detail the docking mechanism that was designed for the mission, a kind of joint design effort between a NASA engineer named Cadwell Johnson, who you may recall as one of the collaborators for Max Faget in designing Mercury and Apollo. And the Soviet engineer was Vladimir Siromyatnikov. And together they came up with this, what's called an androgynous docking system that could be used between any two spacecraft. Neither spacecraft had to be the active or the passive partner in the docking. Either spacecraft could drive, so to speak.